to 800 bushels. The rich man had to admire the dishonest rascal for being so shrewd. And it is true that the children of this world are more shrewd in dealing with the world around them than are the children of light. Here's the lesson: use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then, when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home. So, I'm going to pause at verse 9 so we could process what we just read. So, here we have this rich man who is calling his manager accountable for mismanaging his resources, after which he will be fired. So this manager has squandered the resources that he was entrusted with, and he did not do what he was supposed to do. So now he has to come up with a crafty plan to secure his future. So he decided to round up all the debtors and see how he could reduce their debt so that they will be able to help him out when he becomes jobless. And the rich man, even though he has lost resources in this process, he honored him for his craftiness and for acting shrewd. And shrewd is having or based on a clear understanding and good judgment of a situation, resulting in an advantage. So even though he's honoring this rich his manager, the manager is the one who will be profiting in the end. So before I give my interpretation, I would love to hear your thoughts on what Jesus was really trying to communicate to his disciples. Anyone care to share what they picked up in this parable? Okay, so I'll go ahead with my interpretation.
Yeah. One of the thoughts that that came across my mind as you were reading it is that both of these individuals who are being addressed in this were both quote unquote bad people, which is not typical of your other parables where they usually have like a good person, a bad one. But this was a shrewd manager and then also a tricky employee. So I don't think it's a parable where Jesus is trying to say we need to be either one, but he's actually trying to get us to relate to this story and then see how we should act differently.
Thank you. So yes, the rich man is God, and those that he has entrusted, just like the manager in this story, supposed to represent the believers with earthly. Sorry, go ahead.
You know, probably gonna say is God, but
I said opposite. I said it was not.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Because I also share sentiment because there's so many negative character flaws about him. I don't think Jesus in this particular parable was saying that this was God. I think he actually set it up in a way, and this parable caused a lot of challenges for people. So Tina, you have a tough one.
Yes, I do. So that's why. So my
you two unrighteous people to make a spiritual point, and sometimes people get lost in the fact pattern. So it's very interesting.
Okay, so definitely, my interpretation will be quite opposite. So I did have a difficult time with this parable. I actually spent a couple of weeks trying to study it and see exactly what was trying to be communicated. So that is what I interpreted, and I saw the manager as believers who are God's stewards and being responsible with whatever we were entrusted with, and understanding that we are not necessarily the owners, but we are supposed to be responsible and using it according to what it was given to us to do. So I saw like the resources as like the gospel, and anything that is entrusted to us, like time, our opportunities, abilities, possessions, and even our wealth. And I saw that when the manager was being fired, I imagined us believers being held accountable and having to answer to God exactly what we did with the resources that he gave us. And so I saw believers even going astray and trying to secure a future for themselves, trying to make up for the fact and trying to act rightly knowing that they will be held accountable. And even though that this rich man was commending his manager, it wasn't so much that the dishonesty was being justified, but it was, I saw it as a point being made that the unbelievers are so clever in what they are doing to, advance themselves and to secure their earthly future, and believers not being as clever or not being as um, witty and trying to enhance our spiritual future or even trying to advance the kingdom of God. So that was what I interpreted. So I definitely would love to hear other interpretations.
My interpretation was someone else was speaking. I think I want to hear that person. I was just
All right. Pleasant good evening to everybody. God bless you. I love you all this evening.
good
Um,
evening, Minister Fine.
all I saw basically from out of this whole entire thing as I was going through it, it sounds very familiar here in the world today, very much indeed. And what I took from this whole thing is it's also abuse of authority. We are assigned with different tasks to do, and like you also stated that we're also being held accountable. And because we realize that we're being accountable, the individual being accountable, put in check, in other words, let's put it that way. And he decided to, once again, with abuse of authority, use what he had to try to, once again, benefit himself. So he can, like it says in the word, so he can have a place to stay when he do get fired. So that's the other thing that I was looking at from a job perspective. So a federal employee, yeah, it's called abuse of authority. So his morals was definitely way out the window. And that's all I'm going to say for the evening for right now. And once again, thank you for this pastor scripture. Very, very in depth. God is going to guide you. You got
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add or a different viewpoint? Okay, so I'll continue with verses 10 to 15, again from the NLT version. If you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. And if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches of heaven? And if you are not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with things of your own? No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. The Pharisees, who dearly loved their money, heard all this and scoffed at him. Then he said to them, "You like to appear righteous in public, but God knows your hearts. What this world honors is detestable in the sight of God." So when I read this passage, again, I envision the resources as being money, time, abilities, anything that God gave us to use. And if we are faithful in how we use it, then He can trust us with more. But if we misuse it, there's a strong possibility that if we have more, we would not do the right thing. So it probably wouldn't make sense. And like I said, just along with money, it could be anything like your wealth, your talent, your skills, your time, um, anything that you're interested with. So we can trust that God, being the giver of all things, can keep our supply going every time we give out and every time we make Him a priority. When we give generously towards building His kingdom, or using our resources to benefit others, we acknowledge that we are serving God and not the resources that we were entrusted with. And when we come to understand that it is God's work that is of importance, He can trust us with more. And what we do with our money or our resources or where we invest it tends to reveal like where our heart or what we value in life. And so to unbelievers, it might look irrational because they invest their resources in other things. So it will definitely be contrary to what they believe. And it brought me back to a passage, 1 Corinthians 2:14-15, where it spoke about spiritual matters. And what seems silly to the unspiritual self, um, it can be seem silly to the unspiritual self because they can't comprehend it. For only those that are spiritual can understand spiritual things. So our decision to invest spiritually shows that we are serving God and not the resources that we have. So unbelievers may be investing in their personal pleasure, securing their future, and not so much the kingdom. So that tends to show where their real value lies. And some may value their resources inwardly, and outwardly they may show a form of spiritualness. They might show up to church, they might know hymns, they might pray well, but their priority might not be God or using their resources in to for spiritual matters. So it reminded me of how legalistic the Pharisees were in their religious practices. They tend to appear righteous in public, but their hearts was a total different matter. And I could see why they got upset with Jesus, because he basically was calling them out, about the matters of their heart. And so what they value, or what people tend to value in this world, is not necessarily what God, um, what is not of worth to God. So that was what I gathered from these last few verses. So again, that was my interpretation. I would definitely love to hear your thoughts or any other different viewpoint.
So I have a question. How does this address the idea of the unjust being blessed and being, I don't say highly favored, but the Bible says that favor reigns on the just and the unjust. So how does that, and I guess I'm opening it up to everyone, not necessarily to you, Tina, but to anybody that can answer. How is this verse applicable to those people that we see out there that are not living right, and God is answering them at every turn? Do you look around and they're out here getting the things that we deserve essentially, and they're out there squandering it, but yet they keep getting more and more and more. It's like, how does that equal out? Because what I'm getting is that, if what with a little you have, you demonstrate to God that you have little, and He will bless you with more. If He could show you could be responsible with a little, He'll bless you with more. But then, how do you explain those who are out there that have more and squander it and still get more? I'm sure they're not. I'm sure they're not in any way, you know, being resourceful with their stuff, or they're not demonstrating, I guess in my opinion, the Christian way of handling things. So how do you address that? How do you answer that?
I think you create a lot of dynamic tension in your Christian burden, because even within your Christian, we're making certain assumptions. And I believe that once people are Christian, we believe that your practices are spiritual. There are laws, I call them laws of whatever we want to call them, laws of the universe, spiritual laws, physical laws, emotional laws. They are laws that works regardless of the label of the person who's applying them. So let's look at the law of gravity. We're going to come back to finances because this is such a pivotal scripture. And I think Jesus intentionally made both the owner and the manager to be of a certain disposition, because that was not what is driving the story. When we think about the law of gravity, if a Christian climbs to a 10-story building and jump off, will he fall to the ground?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Why? I mean, he has faith, he believes otherwise. Why would he fall to the ground?
Because gravity pushes him down.
The law of gravity applies to all.
Yeah.
Because the law of gravity is already in effect, right? So when he jumped from the building, he has submitted to an existing law that applies regardless of your label. Does that make sense? If an unrighteous man plants a mango seed will he receive a mango tree?
Sure, because of what we know.
Now, there's a lot of unsaved people that don't have a mango tree. Because, but why would he receive a mango tree? Because of what reason?
Through the principles of planting.
Right.
Two principles. One come from Genesis. He say he beget trees that will bear after their kind. So if you plant a mango seed, because of the law of Moses, it can only beget after its kind. And then he said, as long as the earth grows, there will be what? Seed time and harvest. So seed time means once you plant, there's going to be a harvest because rain will fall, you nurture and all that. So let's go into the finances. And that's why he said, a lot of times there are also financial principles, and believers continue, even in the areas of our health as well, that we can continue to live bad and somehow God can clean it up just because of our faith and what we say on a Sunday morning. Meaning is, just like this manager, he was beginning to waste his employer's money, and that's what the manager was concerned about, because he understood a principle. When you waste mean when you're spending money that is not necessary. You know, if you go to the grocery store and you buy groceries and it's needed, nobody's gonna say you waste. But for the same groceries, we go and overspend on a lot of things that are not nutritious or wholesome for food. There was a lot of junk and snack food. So man, you went into the store and you waste money. It's not that buying groceries is a waste because we need food for survival, but what you spend it on, or the manner and how you spend it, it could have been better spent. Is that making sense? And whether you're Christian or unsaved, if you misspend money, what is going to happen? Because it's limited when it comes in, it's going to be wasted or it's going to go away. True?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And so I think that's what Jesus is telling us. That's why he make these people what they call unjust or ungodly. And why I struggle with this is that everybody gives it a different title in the Bible. If you pick up a different translation, he calls him shrewd. Shrewd to me has a positive connotation. If I call you shrewd, I'm saying you're smart. I may not totally agree with how you achieve something, but I see the purpose behind it. That was, wow, that's shrewd. You open my eyes as to a way of accomplishing something, and the way you use that thing, and for the purpose of use it, I didn't see it being used for that means, right? But then when you go to another translation, it calls him unrighteous or unjust. And right there, just between that, I tell you that every person looks at the story, comes away with conflicting emotions as to what labels to use. Just the labels alone is where I have problems, Tina. Because some people say he's unrighteous, he's unjust, and then other people say, oh, wow, he's smart, he's shrewd. And he can be both, or can he?
Really? You can be both. Be a skewed, unjust person.
He could be both. So let's look at the story. The owner finds out he's wasting his money. And that's the reason why he's letting him go. Was he letting him go for being shrewd or dishonest when he first met him?
That's probably the reason why he hired him in the first place.
They were both shrewd, Alkin. Both of a feather
Yeah.
flock together, show me your company, and I tell you who you are. The way he responded to what he was doing with the contracts, tell me. And the way he took pleasure in it, like, wow, you're smart, told me that's probably why he hired in the first place. He hired people like him who were shrewd. Understand? And so he admired the fact that he was able to use an existing situation to prepare himself by favor. And so instead of being upset by it, he actually commended him on it. And it tells you that they had like disposition. Now there was another story, and it goes way back to Genesis. If you go to Genesis 29, there's a story where Jacob is telling Laban his story as to why he was running away from his brother. He was saying, you know, my mother told me to come look for your Uncle Laban, and this is my story. If you go to verses 13 and 14, I want you to read in the New Living Translation. What does it say?
Genesis 29.
Genesis 29. Jacob is running from Esau, and he reaches into the Middle East by his uncle Laban. He reaches by the well. Rachel met him, and she takes him home.
Verse 11.
Verses 13 and 14. It says something there.
As soon as Laban heard that his nephew Jacob had arrived, he ran out to meet him, embraced and kissed him, and brought him home. When Jacob had told him his story, Laban exclaimed, you really are my own flesh and blood.
You really are my own flesh and blood. Right? So when Laban heard how he had deceived Esau, instead of being upset as his uncle, he actually took pleasure in it because they were like-minded. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Everybody follow me so far? We're still discussing being shrewd. So now what was interesting though, that when Jacob started working for Laban, what began to operate within that relationship?
The same spirit.
Both of them had the same spirit. Laban was trying to outfox Jacob, and Jacob outfoxed Laban. Isn't that what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Now you began to understand the very thing he admired about him, that he saw how he deceived his brother. He thought it was funny, like, wow, you're really my family. But when they began to operate in their relationship, we saw that it created the same tension and conflict. True?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we go back to Luke 16. So the reason this guy didn't get upset when he was letting him go was not for his shrewdness, and it was not for being dishonest or fraud. So that's the part I want to establish. He was actually getting rid of him for, like, for instance, having like a business card, a business account, and when he traveled, he was beginning to spend it on personal things. He was beginning to waste company money, but not for being shrewd. And the owner himself, the employee, was also shrewd. That's why he actually commended him for being shrewd. And because if he was getting rid of him because of fraud or dishonesty, he would not have given him weeks to leave his job. If you're gonna get fired for being dishonest, you have security show up, tell you empty your desk, they walk you down the hallway to the door, embarrass you, take away your key, and you don't get to come back, right? You get fired on the spot.
Not only dishonesty. Sometimes they do it just because that's the principle.
But what I'm saying is, if you are stealing, you get shown the door.
Right.
You don't get 2 weeks to outmaneuver them, destroy their network, cause the system to crash. You don't get opportunities to do what he did.
Yeah, but what's amazing for me with this story is when he had the opportunity to get the affairs in order, he literally just showed his owner his hand. He showed him exactly what he was doing too, because if you're gonna give somebody a break, I understand the reason why he did it, that he gave these people a break so that he could get favor with them. Because if he had said, okay, you owe him $1,000, he had two other options. He could have said, bring the $1,000 now, right? Which would have probably made them hate him, because at the end of the day, they're gonna see his master. They're gonna see him because he's collecting. And the reason why they probably owed the master is because they didn't have it all to give him in the first place. So now you're forcing them to bring all of it one time, right? And I guess he wasn't a thief, so he could have charged them more and say, hey, you owe him 1,000, it's now interest, so you owe him 1,100 or 1,200, and then pay the owner the 1,000 and kept the extra 100 or 200 for himself. That would have been dishonest. So dishonesty wasn't his problem. Like Pastor Carl said, he was mismanaging the guy's money when he collected it. But what's amazing to me is that this is the way that he handled it, that he actually gave them a break, which now bought him favor, not the master, because I'm sure he didn't just say, okay, well, the master said, give me 800. He's like, listen, I'm going to work with you. Put it in today's term, I'm going to work with you. You owe the boss man $1,000, bring 700, man. We good, So
he writes it off while he got a chance, while he's still in the position to do it. Like your president, the last part of it.
So bingo, there you go. If he was dishonest, he would have been telling them to bring cash. If he was dishonest, he was a thief. He would have been telling them to bring cash and keeping it, trying to create a little cushion for himself. So I wanted to, because there's something developing the story that a lot of us miss, and it's why Jesus is commending him as well. Or he could have, even if he discounted it, he could say, well, pay me, right? And he would have kept the discounted money and leave with it to secure himself. But he was not putting his faith in money. He was trying to use his money to build something else that he understood. Okay? And here's the other thing why he is not unjust. He actually had the legal means because as the manager, he had the fiscal responsibility for those contracts and funds. He actually had the authority acting on the employer's part to do what he will with the contracts. So when before, like I was gonna say, he may have been doing stuff with the contracts, being shrewd, not unjust, to advance his employer. He now says, how can I, without robbing my employer, create a benefit to myself? So everybody follow us so far?
Yeah, because
you guys are signing. I know it's taking some time, but I want you to process it because this is a very deep story.
Yeah, he said, you know, when he considered the fact that he worked at this job all day, and now he has to go out there and dig ditches. He didn't, he's physically able to do that, and then he was too proud to become a beggar. So so therefore he said, okay, let me see what I can do to survive now that I know in advance that I'm going to be laid off. So when Sister Tina was giving her explanation, I could understand her interpretation there also, because like here you are this is like the government, you know, we're in the coronavirus or whatever job you have, and you are told that in 2 weeks you got to go home because the company doesn't have enough funds to keep all of us on. And so you are now thinking, how can I secure myself? Because I'm too old to go there and work. Nobody can hire me now because I'm the oldest of the group. And also, I really can't get to the place of begging because that just ain't me. So I want to have 2 weeks to get it to work. And he came up with a plan. And the plan that he came up with is one where he offered discounts. And as everybody was saying, the plan almost seemed country, you know, like, why would you offer discounts when you're trying to gather money? And that's because he had a ulterior motive behind his what he was doing. And I think what he was doing, and I think but I think I mentioned it also, is he was looking for favor. Because when this is all over, he got to survive. And he can't beg, but he can hold on to a favor, which is a begging kind of, but not quite the same.
You read my mind, I don't have any notes with that. So you hear two words you use, discount and favor. And it's still used today in this world. When we go shopping, people are working for AT&T and Apple selling their products. They'll say when you're going, the new Apple phone is $1,200. But come in, man, come and ask for call when you come in and work with them, right? And all of us, they all got the same talk. All of us think that we're going to go in for this specific product, and somehow the price was $1,200, which we are staring down, but we don't have that, but we want the latest Apple phone. And this one said, well, let me see what I could do. And then someone do the stunt with the say, I'm going to apply my discount, right? And if that ain't good enough, let me go speak to the manager. Then go run a corner, stand by the water cooler, come back out. Yeah, the manager playing tough, but I'm getting, you know, they are doing the same thing with those contracts. They are providing you with discounts, but it is within their authority to provide those discounts. So they're not being dishonest, but they are using discounts to get your favor. The next time you want an iPad, guess who you come in to ask for? Carl. And if you walk and you don't see me at work that day, what do you think? Nobody else can give you a discount. So I'm going to come back when Carl is there, because with Carl, I get a what? A discounted contract. And this is what is happening, that the two words that is pivotal, because discounts were not honest, it was within his authority. He's providing discounts. The first one was 50%, and the next one was a 20% discount. He's providing discounts to create favor. And the people who are also business owners or dealers, with the understanding, and this is where he's smart, with the understanding that if he creates favor when he leaves, that favor may work for him. Does that make sense?
Hello.
So he's making sure that that favor works for him. And here's what's interesting. He didn't tell them that, hey, I'm gonna cut you a deal in them. He didn't say that, because then he would have played the time.
Can you hear me?
Cut a deal. My boss fired me. I can give you a 50% discount.
Somebody trying to speak, Pastor Carl.
Say again?
Somebody's trying to speak, but their phone is going in and out.
Oh, that's what it is. I was trying to discern. Thank you. Is there something someone would like to add? Ask.
Hello.
Yes, hello?
I wanted to say, like, in reference to what you were talking about, the whole time I was thinking that he was setting himself up to open his own business in the end. Because if you give all these people a discount, you've already been with this person, you learned everything that they know about the business. Now you're in a position that when you start up, all these people will probably leave this person and now come to you because you showed them favor.
Right.
So it's like he was setting himself up to be on his own, to like start his own company doing the same thing, borrowing money to people.
Yeah, you know, you said something, Keisha, that just resonated with me. I smiled big. You actually changed discount to favor. You said when he gave a discount, he was showing them favor so that favor could be returned. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And favor is the next word for grace. He actually gave them grace on their contract so that in the future, when he found himself vulnerable and disadvantaged, he perchance may obtain favor. So that's the risk he was taking. Now, and this is what Jesus commented, he's transferring his trust and security from one thing to the next. Where is he transferring his security and trust from? And what is he transferring it to?
He's transferring it from money.
Yes.
And he's transferring it to future, just, I guess, future stuff.
You said it right. He's transferring from money and he's transferring it to relationships. And that's what people are missing. And that's what Jesus commended them for, and he's commending ungodly people for. They see that the real value, the real security we have is in relationships over money. And that's why his owner said you're shrewd. You're seeing it? Did you see that, or do we need to slow down? Anyone else sees it that way as well? You know why I say that? Is because Jesus then turns around and says that we in turn, and this is what he says we feel, should use our unrighteous wealth, when he calls unrighteous because he's saying that it's of this world, to create friendships that goes into eternity.
Verse 9.
Verse 9. Could someone read verse 9 and let me know your thoughts about that?
Here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home. That's pretty much blessed to be a blessing.
Yeah, but what else is he telling us about the value of relationships that a lot of times we miss?
Relationships are priceless. You can't put a price on them.
No, that's another thing that I don't think a lot of us even fathom with relationships.
Well, I've always said that favor will take you places that money could never take you. And a lot of people feel like if they have all the money in the world, they could get what they want. But if somebody don't like you, you could take all the money you want to them. They don't have to take it. And somebody that don't even have the amount of money that you have, they'll do that same favor for you just because they like you.
So Pastor, what I'm seeing, and I don't know if anybody else agree. In some ways, what he says, use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. That's kind of like buying friends.
He didn't say buy them. He said
worldly resources
to benefit others.
It's worldly resources.
So Tina, what was your thought on that verse 9 there?
So that one was definitely confusing for me, so I did not address it, honestly.
Right. Yeah, because it like when I was looking at it, it was saying the worldly resources, which in this case, I think when they use the word worldly, it sounds like it's bad, but I think it's actually good. Is the money that is resources you acquire for being in the world, is how I would interpret that. And they're saying use what you have to benefit others and make friends. Now, I was thinking back on a parable we did last week with a rich guy with the son who asked for his wealth, and that's what he did at first. He used the resources to make friends. And sorry for those of you who are just joining, we are in Luke chapter 16, verse 9. Luke chapter 16, verse 9. And so if we if you have resources and you have money, there's two ways you can store up your money, right? You can store it up for you and your family alone, or you can use it to be a benefit to others. But not necessarily, but it says to make friends, but not to buy friends, because I think that could be the interpretation where I'm just gonna, spend everything I have so people could like me. But I don't think that's what Jesus was encouraging here either, because he was watching the shrewdness of the man and the fact that he was being a blessing to others so that later on he can have the favor. But
he's gonna have the favor after his relationship had in terms of his employment. Like this life had terminated. He was going to obtain favor that continued past that point, beyond.
Right.
Okay.
I have one more thought, right? You say some parts called favor beyond the point. But if you look at it from the actual what was owed, beyond the point of what was owed. For example, there was 800 gallons of olive oil. He told him, just change it to 400 gallons of oil. That one act of that one discount, he would probably gain more than the 400. If you owe somebody something, if you owe somebody $10 and they come to you in a harsh way to collect that $10, you're gonna give them that $10. They can't come back to you and say, hey, bro, you go spot me $3, in a real hurtful place. They can be like, nah, I paid you $10, I owe you, mean gain you nothing else. But if they owed you $10 and you say, man, just give me $5, you know how many times you could go back to them and ask them to spot you $3? Anything more than 2 times is past the $5 that you gave them that mercy on, You know what I mean? So you actually gonna gain more just for giving them. You can gain more for giving them less. So that I believe that and it wasn't even like money really, it was in payment with oil and wheat. So he don't have to work. If you have oil, you have wheat. Imagine how many other people he probably traded, people that had that owed sheep, people that owed, and if he do that for everything, they specifically used 2 different things. It could have been one person that owed 800 gallons of oil, and another person that owed 900 gallons of oil. But no, I think that there's some story behind that they changed it. One was oil, one was wheat. He could cook a meal. Even if he don't get money from them, he could get oil from one, wheat from another, sheep from another, goat from another. And if he did that for a lot of people, the man could live a long time just off of collecting whatever they had.
Yeah.
Can we revisit? I'm sorry, Pastor Carl. Can we revisit that verse about the friends thing? I tend to agree with Craig, because how it reads, it sounds like buying friendship, and it's not intended to read like that. So is there another version in a different book that reads it different?
He said, use your wealth to make friends. He didn't talk about buying friends. Buying friends is manipulative. Remember, you could do the same thing, but with a different motive. And the way you're reading it is like, if you bought Tina flowers, took her out for dinner, right? When you were romancing and courting her, that's what you were doing. You were using your money to make friends. And then when you went to propose, if you went to propose with a $10,000 engagement ring, got on one knee with a whole setting, and said, would you marry me? She says, oh my God, oh my God. And so she could show the ring to the friends. You could say that you buy yourself a wife. But we know that wouldn't be the right motive or intention. And so there's a way that you endear people to you by using your earthly resources. And we've all made friends by using whether our earthly positions, our earthly resources, to show people some kind of, let's use the word that Keisha used, showing people some kind of favor. Okay? And by showing them that favor, it changes their heart or their disposition or even their thoughts concerning you in a situation. And I don't think you're buying people with that. When me and Reba gets upset, and it's hard for me to say I'm sorry. I know she likes chocolate. I'll go down and buy one, then Cadbury's chocolate, and I like the rest is on the bed or put it on her dresser. And when I ever see her eating the chocolate, I know I'm forgiven, even before because she's not gonna eat it as long as she's still mad. And so I just told her my secret. As long as she's mad, she don't want nothing from me. And that chocolate will sit there. But the minute I see her pick up a piece and that smile across her face, and she starts savoring each segment of that chocolate, I said, wow, it's done, it's over. It's a wrap. But I didn't use the chocolate to buy her love, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think that's what Jesus is telling us. But I wanted to see something else that a lot of people missed because there was a statement made about marriage not existing beyond death that I think we have assumed for all relationships, and it's not true. And I believe it's only the covenant of marriage that doesn't last beyond death into eternity. There's no marriage and there's no husband and wife in eternity. But believe me, the relationships we have that are spiritual and that are between believers, that is eternal. Yeah. And I think that's what Jesus is saying is that they are sure to know they can use their money that will serve them beyond certain employment, certain relationships, or even beyond. And we miss that point that we should actually be using our earthly resources that doesn't go with us when we go to heaven, but because you brought none to where you're going to take them out. But we can use it to actually build relationships that makes a difference eternally, whether leads people to salvation, leads them into a deeper walk with God. We actually influence in lives, making people to be better part of the Lord Jesus Christ. We actually are making friends where we're influencing them to be better persons and to be good. And that even after death, both in this life, in terms of how they remember us, the memory of our righteous man is a blessing. And then even in eternity, I believe relationships outside of the marriage covenant endures.
The other thought I just looked at it was kind of like the reason why whatever wealth that you have after you've used a portion of it to live on, that it shouldn't be all for you. Part of it should also be used to advance the kingdom, and because that's what is going to matter in the end. So that's kind of how I was looking at it.
Is there another scripture that supports that viewpoint or interpretation?
I actually have another twist to this story. So that's Christians communicating with use an analogy called it Christian to Christian, you and Reva. So if we're dealing with an unbeliever, somebody in the world, somebody who's searching, somebody who's seeking, would they look at it that way? Because a Christian, we're trained because we study the word to see it this way, right? Now, when we're dealing with somebody outside of the house, all of it, how do they receive that? You know what I mean? Because we're trying to communicate, okay, I'm going to use all my wealth to help anyone. Doesn't matter, Christian or otherwise, right? So somebody may say, yeah, you trying to buy me, man. Like, I'm still stuck on that. You know what I mean? Because Christian to Christian is one thing, but then Christian to secular people, that's a whole different perception in terms of what is he trying to do? You know what I mean?
But it depends on how you interpret it. Because would it be like, for example, you have extra resources and you decide to open a boys' home? You know what I'm saying? Like, so it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're trying to buy somebody something, or if you hear of a need, this is a good student, he does well, he just lost his parents and he needs a scholarship to continue to stay at school, and you have extra resources and you put it on deck there, for example. I don't think they would look at it as you're trying to trick them or to bribe them. So I think it all is in context.
Yeah, but that's why I brought the reason up about the olive oil and the wheat. They didn't say money. He didn't say they owed him gold or owed him silver. So then you could think of it as buying. If I keep throwing money at somebody, it's different than if I cook food every day and I go to my neighbor and say, man, here's a plate of food, right? They will never think that I, quote unquote, buying their friendship because I just given them food, but I have extra. You understand? If one passing by and say, man, can your hair look a little bushy? Let me cut your hair for you. You know what I mean? He ain't giving me money, but he's doing something that in his trade that he would have normally got money for. So I wouldn't see it. him cutting my hair for free is different than him giving me the cost of what I would have cost to cut my hair. So there's
There's a big difference.
it's in terms of it is, because when people see money, it's different than they see you actually doing something. You understand? If you come with a messed up smile, or a mischievous look, they'll be like, okay, something a little fishy, because we ain't stupid. We'll be like, I gonna think twice. You sure where you are cut my hair every week, man? Born on where you are cut my hair every week? There's something on my house that you cook in, you like mangoes or something going. You want mango? I'm just saying it's different than if they're giving up money. So, I don't know, that's my point.
Well, it says wealth. So, I define wealth one way. But I understand what Pastor Riva is saying in terms of me using my wealth to help, like, underprivileged kids, for example. That's a good example, and I could agree with that. But it does signify wealth in the NIV.
Yeah, and so I want to address that, and I also want to make a connection, because I was saying about, I think for most believers, because there was a reference made about marriage, we assume that all relationships ended in eternity, and that is not the case. When it comes to buying, though, I think if we look at Jesus' instructions, because he spoke about this matter in other places, I think when you're doing things for people who cannot return the favor or cannot see what you want from them, I think that's where Jesus is directing our energies. They will see for the true value it is. They don't see you as buying anything from them because they don't have anything to give. And so that's where the buying comes in. People who normally think you're trying to buy their friendship is people who don't need what you're offering, but you're still doing it for them anyway because they see themselves being in a position for you to receive something. So if they're wealthy, they don't really need the dinners or the perfumes or the other stuff, but you're still giving them stuff they already have or don't even need or have a use for. They see yourself as trying to buy their friendship or their favor, so that they could do something for you in the future. That's generally when people start associating the word with buying. But when you do things for people who are poor, disadvantaged, see nowhere possible to return that kindness or that favor, that thought of you buying them hardly crosses their mind. And that is the people that Jesus is saying we should use our money to make friends. There's a place where you say that you've done something to the least of these, you've done it to me. If you lend to the poor, God says, then you've lent to me and I will repay you. So I think God is telling us to use our wealth and money in not a way that the world sees it when you're always trying to get into a certain group of people or make friends with people you think could return a favor or benefit you status-wise or otherwise in the future. But you're doing it to really help people who have no means of repaying you. And he's saying with those people, you're going to create relationships that makes a difference both in this life and in the life to come. And I really believe, and for the first time, as I was studying this, it opened my eyes because Jesus said, and I saw it as a hidden truth, that he's also saying that we are beginning to shift our focus from something that is not going to transition into eternity, which is earthly or unrighteous money. Money is not a currency of heaven, but relationships are. And Jesus is saying, you're going to really get it when you begin to use your earthly positions and resources to help people, because those relationships where you made friends is going to transition into eternity. And I truly believe that in eternity, I'm going to recognize you, you're going to recognize me. And I believe a lot of the feelings we have towards each other is going to carry over as well.
The good thing.
Good feeling. And I believe the only time that is clear, and it's found in Matthew 22:30, by the benefit of Brother Christopher, is the only thing that doesn't last is marriage, because I think marriage was a covenant or a type, both in Genesis and in the New Testament, that was supposed to embody or represent, was an earthly representation of our relationship with Jesus Christ as the church. I believe that it is almost like a message, a covenant message of the relationship between Jesus and the church, of God with us. So those are my thoughts. And that's also my assertion that for the first time as I was reading this and studying over the past several weeks, because Tina was going to present last week, it really occurred to me, because if Jesus is saying then it's true, that their relationships outside of the covenant of marriage. Now, marriage, me and Reba as friends as well as we're married. So the marriage, the covenant of the marriage, she's not going to be my wife in heaven, but she's still going to be my friend in heaven, if you understand what I'm saying. So that relationship, got to be wise about it, be good to Reba, because the money you guys have together, that's not going to go with you in heaven. Whether you guys amass $1 million and both of you die, that's going to stay here. But use your money you amass to be kind to her, take her to dinner, treat her well, send her for massages, because in heaven she might just invite you to her house.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Pastor Carl, because the Bible does say that in heaven we shall be known as we are known.
Exactly. Oh, thank you, my brother. So you helped me out. Thank you.
Yeah, and I told, and then
Yes.
When she was talking about being faithful with the little things and you'll be given larger ones, I could answer. I should have interpreted it. I think it also can be interpreted with the resources. Who much is given, much is expected. And so if you have, and then later on, some other people will be presented on those parables. But if you have a little and you are doing good with that little, then you will receive more. So I do agree with that interpretation that Sister Tina was sharing about. Then in verse 10, when he's talking about being faithful with the little things, that you be faithful with the larger ones. And then he also was not encouraging us to be dishonest, which I think you were saying earlier as we wrap up this discussion, that the shrewd person is not a dishonest person. He just was he had a good business sense, so to speak. Because it said here in verse 10, as she had pointed out, that if you are dishonest in little things, how could you be trusted with even bigger things? And so when we are being encouraged in this passage, I don't think we have to be careful. We're not leaving here thinking that God wanted to go there now and start being shrewd and making these big deals and helping out people because then they're going to get us into heaven. I don't think that's what he's trying to say either.
Alkin had an unfinished statement, and we're going to transition to Tina, then go on. And when he said he was transferring his security, his trust and money, he was actually transferring his security and trust and money into relationships. And that's what God is actually encouraging. He's saying that you are wise when you shift your focus or your trust from money, because money can go up and down, it fails. David understood that. And David was pivotal when it came to relationships. A lot of people don't understand the thing that God loved about David's heart is about relationships. And we're going to close with that. And David said something about wealth, and he was a wealthy man. He says, if riches increase, set not your heart on it. And then his son Solomon came after him and said that money is like something that has wings. He said it takes wings and it flies away. And they had a lot. So they realized that at any opportune moment, you can amass wealth that disappears the next day. And a lot of times we look at a bank statement and say, oh, wow, I got $50,000, like good. And we believe we can start dismantling or destroying our relationships. I don't need you, Reba. I got money. I don't need you, Sister. I got money. And then tomorrow, those banks close. And we have seen it with the SNL. The stock markets crash. GES go bankrupt. And all of a sudden, every security we have that was pertaining to money isn't there. But if you fed me what's kind to me, when life changes tomorrow, guess who is still there because of favor? Pastor Carl, you're not go hungry as long as they're alive. That's what people tell you because of relationships. And that's why a lot of people, when they suddenly become unemployed, the humility of it is, a lot of people that didn't realize they were investing in says, no, man, I got you. You don't have to worry. I may not be able to give you $10, but like I can say, I'm going to bring you breakfast. I'm going to make sure, and the minister to you in terms of your needs. Even in terms of visiting you in the hospital, you have $1 million. And if you end up bedridden in the hospital, guess who's not coming to the hospital to see you?
The money.
Your $1 million. It's not going to leave Banco Popular that can look for you. But somebody that you bless, maybe just tell them, hey, brothers, I love you as you go in and out of church. They will probably show up to visit you when you are vulnerable. So I think that's what Jesus wanted us to be mindful of.
I don't know if Tina have any other closing words on her parable.
No, I just thank you guys for your participation, your interpretations, the different viewpoints, because this was definitely a confusing parable. So I really appreciate it. So this wraps up the parable of the shrewd manager. And so I turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, sister. God bless you.
Great job, Sister Tina.
Yes,
Thank
very
you.
good job. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for that. And so next, we have Sister Keisha Renee King, and her parable is Luke chapter 18, verse 9 through 14, and is a parable of tax collector. You're muted, sister. Unmute your phone. There you go.
Okay, can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so tonight, as Sister Reva said, Pastor Reva, I'm going to be presenting on the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. And that's taken from Luke chapter 18 and verses 9 to 14. And I'm reading in the New International Version. And it says from verse 9, to some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like the other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. And we're on to verse 13. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So we all know, like in biblical times, tax collectors were hated and they were labeled as sinners. They were Jews who worked for Romans. So they were considered traitors, and people resented paying taxes to foreigners who ruled over them. So they weren't paid an actual wage by the Romans, but they were expected to take extra money and keep for themselves. Many tax collectors were dishonest and abused this system by taking too much. On the other hand, the Pharisees were considered to be members of like the Jewish sect, and they were noted for strict observance of rites and ceremonies, meaning like, they were traditional. And, they were all about being obedient to the law and the validity of their own oral traditions concerning the law. So like in verse 9, it reads, to some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. So, when I was reading the passage, I just love how Jesus directed the parable to a specific audience. And those of the people that he was really referring to were those who were confident in their own righteousness, or self-righteous and contemptuous, as we call it. And so the condition was identified. And verse 11 reads that the Pharisee stood himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give a tenth of all I get. And so as we read and we look in this passage, it seems to me that the Pharisees was into himself, and he focused on everything that he thought he had done right. It's like he didn't even realize that his prayer didn't honor God, and he showed no respect or no reverence for God. For example, sometimes it's like someone saying this prayer, God, I've been saved for 20 years. Now I read my Bible every day. I fast, I pray. Lord, I even give tithes to the church. So Lord, I'm coming before you, and I need this, and I need this, and I need you to do this for me. And Lord, can you please do this? And Lord, I. And it's like everything is about that person who is praying. And, sometimes I wonder if, like some of us, we think we are holier than others. And sometimes we deceive ourselves without even realizing it. But in the eyes of God, and this is the sad part, we deceive ourselves so much that in the eyes of God, we're actually worse than the people that we think we're holier than, and I feel like that's like such a sad condition to be in. And in verse 13, it says, but the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you, this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And, when we look at these scriptures, we can see two examples, from my taking time to study the scriptures, this is what I came up with. Like, there was two examples in this scripture, and one of them was pride and one was humility. And in the passage in Luke chapter 18, verse 9 to 14, I feel like it focuses more on prayer, but there are some parts that it's a bit deeper. So, I feel like the general focus is prayer, but the deep part focuses more on the content or the condition of the heart as one prays. And this parable, I feel, is somewhat like a rebuke, since it is told to some people who were confident of their own righteousness and look down on everybody else. And I know this is a very nice, eloquent way of saying it. So now I'm going to give you the Caribbean version, okay? So, like, in other words, if I'm going to summarize this the Caribbean way, I will say, well, them people think them better than everybody else. Like, it's a statement that we use in the Caribbean. Who he feel he is. He feel he, better than this person, or he feels he's holier than this person. And I really feel like Jesus presented this parable to the people because Jesus wanted to teach the people the importance of praying with the right attitude. The tax collector portrayed respect and reverence for God by striking his chest because he knew that he was sinful and God was his only hope. And there are times, sometimes I feel, I would have to say that, God's Spirit really spoke to me in two ways. There were times when I was reading it and studying it, and I felt like the tax collector. I felt like the sinner who doesn't have anything to give or to offer to God. But what is deep about this verse and in the verses is that even though the tax collector didn't have anything to offer to God, that God heard his heart, and God heard his honesty, and God heard his sincerity. And sometimes we feel that we need to have a lot to give to God, or we feel like we just need to follow the tradition. We must go to church every Sunday. We must pray. We must read the Bible. Yes, and I'm not saying that it's bad, but when we do those things, sometimes we are like the Pharisee. We demand of God, just like the Pharisee. I do this, I do that. I give to the poor, I give a tenth, and this is what I want, so I need you to answer me. And sometimes God just wants us to be humble, and he wants us to be like the tax collector who doesn't have anything to offer to God, who knows that he's a sinner, who knows that he cannot he is not righteous, and that for him to be righteous, he needs to go to God, and God just impressed upon my heart that sometimes it's the heart. God doesn't, yes, he wants you to serve him with your money. Yes, he wants him to serve you with other things, but the first thing I feel God is looking for is a repentant heart. He's looking at the heart, and God wants us to do his will. So before I end up, I just wanted to share these important points that I took notes on. So there are some important points that, you know, I'd like to share with you all tonight. And it says, simple, humble faith is what God desires. And don't let pride get in your way. Let us not be like the Pharisee, to trust in our own abilities instead of trusting in God. You know, when you looked at the Pharisee, when we pray and we come before God, we acknowledge our weaknesses. We acknowledge where we have fallen short of the glory of God. We confess our sins before God. But the Pharisee, he did not do that. It was more like, Lord, I did this. God, I did this. I. And you know, when you really look at it, we are all objects or products of God's grace and mercy. And no one is better than the other. And as a people, sometimes we miss the lesson because of our lack of teachable spirit. For example, you might say tonight, you know, why is this Trinidadian girl who could barely talk English properly trying to, you know, do this whole Bible, you know, present this Bible study? And sometimes we know, not sometimes, but we know in our heart that God can use anyone to fulfill his plan or purpose in our lives. But then there are times when God sends a person who is beneath us to help us or to teach us something. And I fear sometimes in life that we are like the Pharisee. We feel that that person is beneath us, and we dismiss our own teaching or lesson or blessing or miracle from God. So it's just an encouragement tonight not to be stubborn with pride like the Pharisee, but to be humble, to humble ourselves before the mighty hand of God. And in conclusion, you know, I read the passage so much times, and God showed me so much stuff about myself that I needed to work on, because sometimes, at times, I feel like I'm like the Pharisee. I don't want to be like the Pharisee, but sometimes, you know, we fall into that trap of tradition, and God doesn't want tradition. He wants relationship. He wants friendship. He wants humility. He wants repentance. And you know, the Bible didn't record what happened after, except, you know, it described that which prayer honored God. And I oftentimes wonder if the Pharisee knew that his prayer displeased God. You know, like if there was a part in the Bible that showed, okay, you know, the Pharisee, God showed the Pharisee or explained to the Pharisee, well, you know what, your prayer is not honored by me because this is what you did, or, you know, you displease God. Would he have been humble enough with a teachable spirit and confess or even allow himself to be led by using the prayer example that the tax collector gave? You know, many of times we are like the Pharisees. We refuse to be led by people God sends our way to encourage, edify, or bless us. Instead, as I end, I just pray and I hope that just as the tax collector pleaded God for mercy of his own unrighteousness, because he knew that true perfection and true perfect righteousness can only be found in the perfect Lamb of God. And just as David said in Psalms chapter 51 and verses 1 and 2, have mercy on me, O God, because of your unfailing love, because of your great compassion, blot out the stain of my sins. Wash me, clean me from my guilt, purify me from my sins. You know, I just pray tonight that we will have that same spirit of the tax collector and not of the Pharisee. And that, as you know, the Bible verse in James chapter 4 verse 10 says that we will humble ourselves before the mighty hand of God so that he can lift us up. And this is just my little take on this study tonight. And I would love to hear some of you all feedback on your interpretation or your understanding of this parable.
Well, great job. Thank you so very much. And you know, the Pharisees are always those individuals who see themselves as being, you know, just noble and greater than. And as you pointed out, you know, just having that opportunity to be seen is what gave them the pleasure of being able to come before and just stand up and say, oh, look at me, poor me, I've been so good to you, and because of this. And it doesn't take all that, you know. God knows what you've done, and what he just wants is for you to come in a broken and contrite spirit when you pray to him. So very great interpretation. I don't know if anybody else have any thoughts on it.
Anyone else?
Thank you for your insight and your candor. Definitely, you know, made me really think about it. You're truly right. At that time, we ourselves are in that position, you know, as in the Pharisees and so forth. And we definitely have to put ourselves in check and do ourselves and go before the Lord, because, you know, the Lord weighed our hearts. Even though we may be doing things that we think might be right, He will still be checking on our hearts. So thank you this evening for letting us check on our hearts and where we're supposed to be with God. God bless.
Yeah, excellent, Darky. I had a question though, for conversation. Jesus went to great lengths to say that when the Pharisee came into the temple, he stood by himself, and that
You mean the tax collector?
he said the Pharisee stood by himself, and the tax collector was in a distance, stood at a distance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it seemed like there was a considerable amount of distance between them. And the question I have for you, because it occurred to me that may have been the case, and so I just want you to talk about it. Do you believe that the tax collector heard the Pharisee's prayer, which seems to have happened first?
Pastor Carl, I was thinking the same thing, and my answer is yes. He heard him. And the reason why he said he heard him is just the posture that he took, you know, like he's hearing him, not even like this man, the Pharisee, the publican. And he decided, you know what, God, I am coming to you. I heard his prayer, but I am just letting you know that I'm a sinner and be merciful on me. And that's all he had to tell God, you know, and God honored his heart. So I am saying, for me, I really believe that he heard him.
I think he heard him because verse 14 said so. But you know, it's really a deep piece of scripture there, Keisha. I think you painted a really clear picture of what God expects from us as Christians. You know, repentance is ultimately where we are to, I think, be, and you know, the heart is it. And if without the heart, like Brother T said, I think we're hopelessly doomed, you know, because our hearts have to be in the right place. But I think, you know, with the heart that is genuine, you can't unlike the tax collector, unlike the Pharisee, he was pretty much labeling out all the things that he did to have a good heart. But that's not how I don't think that's how you do it as a Christian man or woman. So that was really deep for me.
Yeah, I actually am having a Brother T saw that also. What I saw is that two men went to the temple to pray, and the fact that it says two men went, I believe that they were going together. So they were going to pray and to participate in prayer, but the one was despised. And I think when they entered into the temple, because now they're in a place where you have other people associated, the Pharisee began to distance himself and stood by himself. And you can tell from the posture of the tax collector, he began to feel despised, because I'm quite sure there were other people of the Jewish sect from whom he collected that despised him. And so he began to withdraw. He began to stand at a distance. And so I began to sense a sense of unworthiness, that he wasn't welcome, or that he wasn't liked. And what I sensed happened, and then I'm going to ask you a question, is that when the Pharisee opened his mouth, we call it to pray, that he wasn't really praying. He was what I call posturing. So he begins to speak loudly to impress his other Pharisee friends about himself, because there's a lot of personal information there about him tithing. I guess you want the priest to know, hey, I tithe, I pray twice a week in case you don't see me. A lot of it just posturing, right? And then he uses it, I thank you, to make a comparison, which is not thanking God for like life or his blessings, but to put down and judge and criticize another human being. So he's using the rituals of worship for personal attacks and to marginalize and disparage another fellow human being because of his profession. He didn't like him, he despised him. But he's doing it away loudly. And then you have to ask yourself, is he really praying to God? Or is he impressing the people around him by his conversation? Who is he really talking to? Who is the intended audience of his discourse? And so that was my follow-up question. Would you call what he's doing praying?
No.
But he made reference to God. Why would you say no?
It's still a prayer, but it's not one that's going to be answered. You know, prayer just communicating, but are you communicating the right way? That's just my take on it. Sorry.
I think, like Pastor Carl was saying, as he went, it became, he was just started to be impressive too about his own goodness, you know, and how he thought he was impressing God, but he failed to realize that what he was doing wasn't impressive to God. He wasn't, I don't think he was praying to God. I think he was just making a speech and just put God's name in it. There was his prayer had no elements of confession. He didn't even ask for forgiveness of his sins. I think he was just trying to impress, others around him, and just kind of probably like what we just say, throw word against the tax collector who was there, who, even in his so-called prayer, he's just even letting him know how much he despises what he does. I mean, I guess that's my thought.
I think he was, Pastor Carl, it's not everyone who said God is praying. I mean,
exactly.
You hit something, you say, oh God, you're not praying. You're, just a slang. So yeah. I'm not sure that is prayer. I think, like you rightly said, Pascal, it's posturing. It's actually throwing words, in my view. Mm-hmm. He was throwing words. Mm-hmm. And a lot of time it happened in Christendom too, where persons throw words, and we tend to think that, wow, this person is, but no, throwing words and trying to see who is better than who, but in the kingdom, we are all, God said that, in terms of faith, to every man he has given a measure of faith, and you are judged based on that. For instance, someone who's my father-in-law, he would pray for an hour. And when I had first married to my wife, that was like 36 years ago, you would hear him praying and he would go to his room, he'd pray for an hour. And I used to say, well, this guy, an hour? No, that was 36 years ago. And I thought it's strange. And he would call every child and he would go through the litany of names. However, I find myself praying often and long as well now. But you see, over the years, you build that. So sometimes some persons, as a young believer, you try to push the young believer and say, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And we forget that practice is what have us where we are. And so we need to nurture. And I think that Pharisee, that guy was really, like you said, posturing and more or less showing off. He tried to push eloquence and that type of stuff. more than being contrite. And God said, a contrite heart. That is what he wants more than anything. He was not contrite. Brokenness and a contrite heart is what God wants to see. And the tax collector demonstrated that quite clearly.
Yeah.
In my view.
Yeah. I think the Pharisees miss his whole mission here on earth, that, he's here to save the sinners, that God came to save the sinners, that you're supposed to, be kind to those and tell them about the kingdom so you can help them to be righteous, not talk about your righteousness. I mean, it's best he had stayed home, because the condition of his heart, which Renee spoke about, was just so bad. God didn't even hear that prayer, because it wasn't even a prayer. So
I like that one. It better get stay home.
Can I offer something?
Of course.
Yeah. I see. Can it be that the Pharisee really thought he was praying to God, because that's the way he knew, and that's the reason why God told these parables specifically for the Pharisees, to help them to see themselves? I would offer that he probably thought he was doing what he knew, that he was doing what he felt was the right thing to do. He was so lost in his way that he thought he was offering. I think he thought he was offering a sincere prayer to God, because he didn't know any better. And that's why Jesus told these parables, specifically to help the Pharisees to see themselves and how lost they were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I still want to reiterate. I'm just looking at it. It's capital G God. And if you look in the concordance, it lets you know that there's a deity. And had he stopped and just say, God, I thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bam. That's all he had to say. But then again, his heart was not right. So for me, yes, it's still a prayer, but it's a prayer that God could not receive. And then I do agree that's why we have the story of the parable to say about the Pharisees and the publican. And he had just come with a right heart and the pastor and say, God, I love you, I thank thee. Boom. That's it. But he did not see the beam in his own eye. And he wanted to stretch afar to somebody else's, and that was a problem.
Yeah. Because remember, they were caught up in the law and the work.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the thoughts that I was thinking too as I was reading it was that here he was saying that like he pointed out different things about himself compared to others, and sometimes we might do it not necessarily to tear down another person, but to justify why God needs to be good to us. So we might say, "Oh God, I've been I've been so faithful. Every Sunday I make sure I'm chanting. Everybody don't go chanting. Look at you blessing me and blessing me." Sometimes we say those prayers not to tear down the other person next to us, but because we try to like make ourselves look better in God's eyes.
But Pastor Riva, Hezekiah did that when the angel went to him and told him he was going to die. He spread the letter before the lie. He said, "Lord, remember what I do for you."
Okay.
And so, no, Mikey, he was in a prayer room, but he reminded God. He said, "God, listen, you got to understand." And I tell you the truth, there are times when I tell God that, and I think sometimes we reach that point in our lives when, yes, we say, God, we will remind him. And I refer to Hezekiah in that state. So sometimes, yes, you can be self-righteous, etc. But when your back is against the wall and you know what you've done for God, and in your private closet, you've done it sincerely, you cry out to him, reminding him of, not that he forget, but you are actually reminding yourself, and you're sending back to God. You see, and like I said, prayer is a reminder. You see, and stuff. So you're, oh God, so you're strengthening yourself in the meanwhile, because God never forgets. But it was a test of his faith anyway, of Hezekiah's faith. I always believe.
Yeah. That's fine, but I just think when you come to comparison, you might end up despising people. So you just have to be careful, when you do say God, when you say, God, remember my faithfulness, that you're not saying I am more faithful than someone else, because then you just end up despising people, and then it just taints your heart.
Yeah, sure. Excellent. Yeah. I think what Hezekiah reminded God of his faithfulness, but he didn't do it in comparison in terms of putting someone else down.
That's right.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I made that clear.
Yeah, there was a very good conversation of the kind of the depth we need, because that's what's really matter. And the other thing, and I know he used God, capital G, in terms of referring to God, but I don't think he had a revelation of who God is. And you know, the scripture said, "He who comes to God must believe and know that He is." And we started in the same Isaiah, because he said, "In the year that Uzziah the king died, I saw the Lord high and lifted up."
Lifted up.
And he actually saw God in that role, that I envisioned the tax collector also experienced that of God. It humbled him, and he immediately saw himself for who he was. And he said, "Behold, I'm a man of unclean lips, and I'm from an unrighteous people." And God was able to respond to that, like, because of the contrite heart, in terms of helping him, or sanctifying him, or purifying him to be better, because he saw God as he is. And I think the holiness of God brought conviction. And this guy is standing up in God, and he has no conviction at all, because he's impressing the people around him as well as God, how good he is and how deserving he is. And I saw no supplication, I saw no intercession, I saw no prayers of thanksgiving. It was self-centered. And the one thing I want us to see, because a lot of people be jumping around celebrating people when they preach or give testimonies, when the testimonies are just like this Pharisee, and where it's being used for ulterior motives and for wrong purposes. You know,
Oh yeah.
the preaching should be edifying, not throwing word and putting people down and mashing
That's
people
right.
up and using slight, because all of a sudden Reba show up and she's sitting over in that corner, and all of a sudden I could march her through voices that now let people do, you know what I mean? That's, and believe it or not, there have been old school ways of doing stuff that was done exactly what the Pharisee was doing, and which was to hurt people and not to help them.
But you know, Pastor Carl, as you were speaking, it reminded me of persons when you're passing the offering plates and they take out their wallet and they start to leaf through it, and they take out the big ones so you could see what they put in,
Right.
while another person next to them may have something smaller, and they fold it up very fine.
Roll it up.
You roll it up, because I mean, the guy really showed them up, you see. Yeah. And in some somewhat subtle ways, as believers, we, you know,
Amen,
could exhibit that type of, I say, pharisaical behavior, if there's such a word.
That's true.
And
Good revelation is true.
And it is so wrong, you know. It is so wrong. I just thought I'll throw that in. So we also have to be careful.
There's things we can clean up, actually. There's things that we sometimes encourage and cheer on. Hallelujah, you know, and encourage, behavior encourages is really not wholesome, and probably could be cleaned up, you know. And that's so true. So however we can see that and make the application as well. Very good application.
Yeah, so I think just like remembering that we have to be humble, and whenever we're doing things, and we are the one that get the glory was already gathered, and so there's nothing more for God to do. But if we humble ourselves in the sight of the Lord, then He will be the one to lift us up. And that's what the tax collector did. That when he came before God's presence, he realized where he was and who he was, and in comparison to even the Pharisee, and also in comparison to God's presence that he was in. And that he was not worthy to be there, but he wanted God to have mercy.
Help.
And so so you know, we have to, like I think it was Clarissa stated, we have to make certain that we always do a heart check. Yes. And not speaking out of pride or even out of self-righteousness when it comes to anything, because that is not something that God desires or expects from us.
Amen.
Good job for both of you, and both of you young ladies did an excellent job this evening. Again, we thank you all so very much for spending your time and preparing for the discussion. And as you read through these passage scriptures, even though they are common stories that you might have heard, as you continue to discuss them, you see the revelation that comes from us spending time in God's word. So there are about 4 more parables that are left. And so next week we'll pick up Sister Keisha. In the interest of time, Richardson, you will start and then we'll continue with the other assignments accordingly. But we want to thank God for all of you who are able to join us in the discussion this evening, and then Pastor Calvin.
We also want to encourage you on Holy Thursday. I know in St. Thomas, when it comes to the government workers, you may be off, but we just also want to encourage you not only to participate in our day of fasting with prayer on Holy Thursday, but we're also asking you to encourage one other person to join you in seeking after God and being part of our Zoom prayer meetings. We have prayer hosts that has been assigned, and I believe it's going to be a time of refreshing, given the season and turning people's hearts and minds towards God and what He accomplished for us as He was making that final week journey to the cross, which led to His resurrection. And so we give God thanks for that. Thank you all for being here. God bless you. Have an amazing evening. Thanks for giving us your extra time. And may God reward you for that as well. So let us close. We're going to close in prayer. Father, we love you. Thank you for your anointing, your presence upon your people. And what is so amazing, as you said, iron sharpens iron, I listen to them reflect on the scriptures. There's so many things that you speak to me in my private reflections that you also reveal to them. And we give you praise for the same spirit, the same anointing that is working in my life, is also working in their lives, and reciprocal as well. And I pray that you continue to be a part of our lives. May you continue to bless us. May you continue to bless and establish the works of our hands. May you continue to go before our face and shine your light, your glorious light upon our paths. May you bless your people as we go our separate ways, and may you give them an amazing evening of rest. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Amen. Good night, brethren. See you on Thursday.
Good night.
Morning.
Thank you to all the presenters. You got me digging deep. Thank you to all the presenters.
Good night, everyone.
God bless.
All right, guys. Thanks. Bye now.
Everyone, love you all. Have a nice evening.
Good night.